Hollywood's golden age sold the world a fantasy: perfect marriages, flawless masculinity, and romance that ended with a kiss and a fade to black. But behind the carefully lit studio portraits and manufactured love stories, some of the biggest stars were living entirely different lives. They hired men through underground networks, conducted secret affairs in homes the studios didn't monitor, and built elaborate facades to protect careers that depended on appearing heterosexual. These weren't just rumors whispered in dark corners. These were systematic deceptions that involved studios, agents, and an entire infrastructure designed to hide the truth. 10 legends, 10 secrets the industry spent decades burying, and one unavoidable reality: the Golden Age's glamour was built on lies. If you're ready to see behind Hollywood's most carefully constructed illusion, subscribe now, because the truth refuses to stay hidden. Walter Pidgeon, the star who created Hollywood's secret network. Walter Pidgeon was a respected leading man whose career spanned decades, but his real legacy had nothing to do with the films he appeared in. Despite being married twice and maintaining a carefully constructed public image of heterosexual respectability, Pidgeon was clearly attracted to young men, a truth he had to hide completely to protect his career and reputation in an industry that punished any deviation from strict heterosexual norms. One day, while getting gas on Hollywood Boulevard, Pidgeon encountered a young man named Scotty Bowers working at the station. Pidgeon offered Bowers $20 to come home with him, and what began as a single transaction quickly became a regular arrangement. But Pidgeon didn't keep this discovery to himself. He started telling his friends, other closeted actors, directors, and industry figures, about the extra services available at this particular gas station. What Pidgeon helped create was extraordinary. For years, Bowers ran what amounted to a sexual referral service out of that gas station, becoming a central figure in Hollywood's underground sex trade. Sometimes Bowers himself would provide services to customers. Other times, he connected them with his network of cash-strapped ex-Marine friends who were willing to be paid for sexual encounters. The operation grew rapidly, expanding to include people of all sexual orientations and interests, becoming a lifeline for closeted Hollywood figures who had no other safe way to explore their authentic desires. Later in life, Bowers wrote a memoir that shocked the entertainment world by naming names, revealing the secret sexual lives of some of Hollywood's most celebrated stars. The book pulled back the curtain on decades of carefully maintained deception, showing how extensively the industry had hidden the truth about its biggest names. Pidgeon's role in creating this network represented both the desperation of closeted performers and the elaborate infrastructure that developed to serve their needs while protecting their public images. The system Pidgeon helped establish wasn't just about sexual encounters. It was about survival in an industry that offered no legitimate space for authentic LGBTQ+ identity. Greta Garbo, the mysterious star who refused to explain. Greta Garbo moved to the United States when she was 20 years old and became one of the most famous actresses of all time. Her performances were mesmerizing, her screen presence magnetic, and her beauty considered otherworldly. During her career, she had relationships with both men and women, conducting her romantic life with a fluidity that was decades ahead of its time. But Garbo understood something crucial about surviving in Hollywood. She didn't have to lie to the press about her personal life. She simply had to refuse to discuss it at all. Garbo's approach to privacy was absolute. She didn't give interviews explaining her relationships, didn't respond to speculation about her romantic life, and didn't feel obligated to provide the media with details that would be used to define and limit her. This silence gave her a mysterious air that only enhanced her appeal, allowing audiences to project their own fantasies onto her while protecting her actual private life from scrutiny and judgment. Her romantic connections included some of the most famous women of her era. She may have had sexual encounters with Marlene Dietrich, creating a connection between two of Hollywood's most iconic actresses. Rumors also connected her to Marilyn Monroe and other celebrated women, though the full truth of these relationships remains wrapped in the discretion Garbo maintained throughout her life. At the same time, many men proposed marriage to her, at least two, including Swedish publisher Lars Saxon and American silent film star John Gilbert, reportedly asked her 3 times each. Despite these proposals and the intense public interest in her romantic life, Garbo never married and never had children. She made the extraordinary decision to quit movies at age 35, walking away from fame at the height of her career to live alone and on her own terms. She remained in seclusion until her death in 1990, never breaking her silence about the relationships that had defined her private life. Garbo's story represents a different strategy for survival, not elaborate deception, but absolute refusal to participate in the game of public confession and explanation that Hollywood demanded from its stars. Montgomery Clift, the heartthrob destroyed by secrecy. Montgomery Clift was a mysterious 1950s heartthrob whose talent set him apart from his Hollywood peers. Unlike most actors who flocked to Los Angeles, Clift lived in New York, a decision that kept his personal life significantly more private and protected his dating life from the scandal and gossip tabloids that dominated Hollywood coverage. He was famous for starring in films with Elizabeth Taylor, and their relationship made the world endlessly curious about whether they would become a romantic couple. But Clift's romantic interests extended far beyond the heterosexual narrative the public wanted to believe. Clift kept his sexual life extraordinarily private from the rest of the world, but the top people in Hollywood knew the truth. He often hired men through underground networks to provide the intimate companionship he couldn't pursue publicly. This secret life required constant vigilance, careful management, and enormous emotional energy to maintain. The psychological toll of living this way, always watching, never able to be authentic in public spaces, created a burden that grew heavier with each passing year. After a devastating car accident in 1956 that left him with a severely scarred face, Clift's career began its inevitable decline. The accident was a turning point, but those close to him understood that the damage went far deeper than physical scars. His drinking, which had been problematic before the crash, became severe. The alcohol abuse was almost certainly connected to the exhausting burden of hiding his true identity, of never being able to live openly as the person he actually was. The constant performance required to maintain his heterosexual public image while conducting his actual romantic life in complete secrecy created an internal conflict that manifested in increasingly destructive behavior. Clift struggled with the fundamental dishonesty his career demanded, and the psychological cost was visible to anyone who looked closely. The man who brought such emotional truth to his screen performances was forced to live a lie in every other aspect of his public existence. Clift died in 1966 at just 45 years old. Far too young, his brilliant talent ultimately consumed by the impossibility of living authentically in an industry that demanded complete conformity to heterosexual norms. Barbara Stanwyck. The Tough Star's Carefully Hidden Truth. Barbara Stanwyck built her career playing tough, independent women who refused to be defined or controlled by men. Her performances in films like Double Indemnity and The Lady Eve established her as one of Hollywood's most versatile and compelling actresses, but her sexuality became a source of constant speculation throughout her career. Stanwyck was widely considered to be a lesbian, yet she was forced to maintain a public appearance of heterosexuality to avoid bringing controversy to the industry that employed her. Stanwyck married twice and adopted a son, actions designed specifically to keep up appearances and deflect speculation about her true romantic interests. Despite these conventional markers of heterosexual life, she never publicly acknowledged being gay, maintaining strict silence on the subject even when directly questioned. In 1962, she played a lesbian character named Jo Courtney in the film Walk on the Wild Side, one of the first times Hollywood showed a lesbian character on screen. Yet Stanwyck still refused to discuss her own sexuality, keeping that wall between her professional work and her private truth firmly in place. The most revealing incident came when writer Bose Hadley questioned whether she had ever had lesbian relationships, drawing comparisons to other stars like Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich, who were rumored to be involved with women. Stanwyck's response was immediate and definitive. She reportedly kicked Hadley out of her house, refusing to engage with questions about her private life, even in what should have been a safe, confidential interview setting. Her reported relationship with her publicist Helen Ferguson lasted for years, conducted with the discretion necessary to protect both women's careers and reputations. The connection represented the kind of long-term partnership that Stanwyck couldn't acknowledge publicly, but that provided genuine emotional support and authentic connection in a life otherwise defined by performance and carefully managed public appearances. Stanwyck's acting career lasted 60 years total, and she passed away in 1990 at the age of 83, taking her secrets with her and never providing the public confession that speculation had demanded for decades. Marilyn Monroe, the sex symbol's hidden truth. Marilyn Monroe's status as a sex icon for heterosexual men is so firmly established that most people never question the narrative. But despite her reputation, Monroe wasn't actually the insatiable man-eater her public image suggested. With women, Monroe was able to let her guard down completely, expressing herself both physically and emotionally in ways she apparently couldn't with men. She found these relationships more satisfying and more genuine than the heterosexual encounters that defined her public persona. Monroe may have been the most famous of Hollywood stars who were privately gay or bisexual. She struggled with emotional issues stemming from a traumatic childhood and mental illness that affected her throughout her life. She started modeling when she was young and eventually joined the A-list, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in the world. But fame didn't bring peace or authentic connection. It often made both more difficult to find. According to various accounts, Monroe had health problems that made heterosexual intercourse uncomfortable or painful, leading her to prefer intimate moments with women. These relationships provided not just physical satisfaction, but emotional safety, spaces where she didn't have to perform the breathless, hypersexual persona the public demanded. With women, she could simply be herself without the constant pressure to embody male fantasy. Monroe was notorious for her sexual appetite, and many prominent people, as well as plenty of regular individuals, claimed to have had relationships with her. The long list of alleged affairs with powerful men has been documented extensively, becoming part of her legend. But the relationships with women remained hidden, protected by Monroe herself and by an industry that had no interest in complicating the profitable image of the ultimate heterosexual fantasy object. Monroe died at just 36 years old in what was officially ruled a probable suicide, though questions and conspiracy theories have persisted for decades. Her death came at a moment when she was struggling with mental health issues, career difficulties, and the exhausting burden of maintaining an image that contradicted significant aspects of her authentic self. Spencer Tracy, the leading man's manufactured romance. Spencer Tracy was a massive movie star whose career spanned decades. He was married with children, maintaining the image of a conventional family man that Hollywood demanded from its leading actors. But according to multiple sources, Tracy was also romantically and sexually involved with numerous men throughout his career, including Scotty Bowers, the ex-Marine who ran Hollywood's underground sexual referral network from his gas station on Hollywood Boulevard. The most famous aspect of Tracy's romantic life was his decades-long relationship with actress Katharine Hepburn, a Hollywood love story celebrated for its longevity and the apparent depth of connection between two legendary performers. But according to Bowers and others, this relationship was largely a pseudo-romance manufactured by the studio system. The carefully maintained public image of Tracy and Hepburn as devoted partners served both their interests. It provided cover for Tracy's actual romantic life with men and reinforced Hepburn's own heterosexual credentials, despite her own complicated relationship with traditional femininity and sexuality. Tracy used alcohol to cope with the sadness and internal conflict created by living a fundamentally dishonest life. His drinking became legendary in Hollywood, but the underlying causes, the psychological toll of constant deception, the inability to live authentically, the exhaustion of maintaining a false identity, remained largely unacknowledged. The bottle provided temporary escape from the burden of performance that extended far beyond his work on film sets. Tracy is also reported to have had a long-term relationship with actor John Derek, conducting this romance with the same secrecy that characterized all his actual intimate connections. The relationship existed in the shadows while Tracy's public life continued to project conventional heterosexual masculinity. For 25 years, Tracy and Hepburn maintained their public personas, appearing together at industry events and allowing the press to celebrate their unconventional but apparently genuine partnership. The truth behind this carefully constructed image remained hidden until long after both stars had died, when Bowers's memoir finally revealed the elaborate deception that had sustained one of Hollywood's most famous love stories. Katharine Hepburn, the proudly unconventional star. Katharine Hepburn is one of the most well-known and celebrated actresses in Hollywood history, winner of 4 Academy Awards and star of countless iconic films. But her success came despite, or perhaps because of, carefully managing a truth that would have destroyed her career if fully revealed. Hepburn was gay, or at the very least primarily attracted to women, conducting significant romantic relationships with female partners throughout her life. According to those who knew her, Hepburn was out and proudly gay within certain trusted circles, living authentically in private spaces while maintaining a carefully constructed public image. But the studio contracts that controlled major stars' lives during the Golden Age explicitly prevented them from being open about their sexuality with the public. The restrictions weren't just suggestions. They were legally binding agreements that could destroy careers if violated. Hepburn was famous for her unconventional style, often dressing in pants and adopting a more masculine presentation than was typical for Hollywood actresses of her era. This gender nonconformity was part of her appeal, making her seem independent and modern. Though she had relationships with men and clearly appreciated male companionship, it appeared to those who knew her well that she preferred women romantically and sexually. Her famous relationship with Spencer Tracy, celebrated for decades as one of Hollywood's great love stories, was reportedly manufactured by studios to maintain both stars' heterosexual images. The romance served both their needs, providing cover for Tracy's relationships with men and reinforcing Hepburn's credentials as a woman capable of attracting and holding one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. For 25 years, they maintained these public personas, attending events together and allowing the press to romanticize their unconventional arrangement. The truth about Hepburn's actual romantic life, the women she loved and built relationships with, remained carefully hidden, protected by the same fierce independence and refusal to conform that made her such a compelling screen presence. She lived on her own terms as much as the industry would allow, finding spaces for authenticity while still maintaining the facade necessary for career survival. Cary Grant, the elegant star's 12-year partnership. Cary Grant defined sophisticated masculinity for generations of moviegoers. His performances in classics like North by Northwest and Bringing Up Baby established him as the gold standard for charm, wit, and elegant masculinity. He appeared to have everything: spectacular good looks, impeccable style, enormous talent, and romantic appeal that made him one of the most desired men in the world. But behind this perfect image lived someone whose most significant romantic relationship had to remain completely hidden from public view. Grant was married 5 times throughout his life, each marriage extensively publicized and presented as evidence of his heterosexual credentials. But the relationship that apparently mattered most to him was with fellow actor Randolph Scott, with whom he lived for 12 years. The two men met on the set of Hot Saturday in 1932 and soon moved into a mansion in Los Angeles they called Bachelor Hall, a living arrangement that continued before, during, and after both men married various women in the 1930s. The relationship generated enormous speculation within Hollywood circles, but both men consistently denied any romantic involvement, bowing to the unspoken rules that governed the industry. Photographs from the era capture moments of remarkable intimacy between Grant and Scott. Comfortable physical proximity, shared laughter, domestic scenes that suggested far more than simple friendship. But publicly acknowledging their connection would have destroyed both their careers, so they maintained the fiction of being merely economical roommates sharing expenses. Reports from those close to both men suggest they were genuinely in love, building a life together that represented the only authentic domestic partnership either experienced despite their multiple marriages. According to some accounts, Grant eventually ended the relationship because of intense pressure from Hollywood executives who feared the rumors were becoming too persistent and threatening both stars' marketable images. The cost of that separation, of choosing career survival over authentic love, affected Grant for the rest of his life. Despite his 5 marriages and his status as one of Hollywood's most eligible men, he reportedly never found the same genuine connection he'd experienced during those 12 years with Scott. Marlene Dietrich, the icon who lived authentically in private. Marlene Dietrich brought European sophistication and provocative sensuality to Hollywood, creating an iconic screen presence that challenged American conventions about femininity, sexuality, and acceptable behavior. Her trademark tuxedos, sexually ambiguous performances, and unapologetic independence made her unique among Golden Age stars. While her professional image was carefully crafted and maintained, her personal life was kept strategically hidden from public scrutiny, though not because she was living conventionally. Dietrich was actually bisexual, openly enjoying the thriving gay scene and drag balls of Berlin in the 1920s before coming to America. This European openness about sexuality gave her a different perspective than many American-born stars, and she brought that sensibility with her even as she learned to navigate Hollywood's more restrictive moral environment. Throughout her long and successful career, which extended all the way into the 1980s, Dietrich had more than 50 roles and became one of the best-known actors of her generation. As a bisexual woman, she had to carefully manage which aspects of her romantic life became public knowledge. She got married and had children, maintaining the conventional markers of heterosexual respectability. But she continued seeking happiness and genuine connection with other women, conducting these relationships with discretion, but without the same level of shame or secrecy that characterized many closeted Hollywood figures. According to various accounts, Dietrich's husband maintained a mistress with whom he lived, remarkably at Dietrich's expense. This arrangement suggests the sophisticated European understanding both partners brought to their marriage, a public partnership that provided social legitimacy while allowing both people to pursue their actual romantic interests separately. Dietrich's bisexuality was more openly acknowledged in European circles throughout her career, though American publicity carefully emphasized her relationships with men while downplaying her affairs with women. She had relationships with numerous famous figures of both sexes, living with a sexual freedom that was extraordinary for her era while still maintaining the career success that depended on carefully managed public perception. Rock Hudson, the romantic idol's tragic secret. Rock Hudson died of AIDS at age 59 in 1985, becoming one of the first major celebrities whose death from the disease forced America to confront the epidemic it had been ignoring. Before his illness, he had been a matinee idol, nominated for an Academy Award and considered one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. His romantic comedies with Doris Day made him the fantasy of millions of women who dreamed of being swept off their feet by someone exactly like him. Throughout his career, Hudson kept an extraordinarily low profile regarding his personal life, even though he was married to Phyllis Gates for 3 years in the 1950s. The marriage was a classic lavender marriage, an arrangement designed specifically to quash persistent rumors about his sexuality and protect his valuable image as a romantic leading man. But people in Hollywood knew the truth. Hudson was gay, and his sexuality was an open secret within the industry, even as it remained completely hidden from the general public. Interestingly, it was Gates herself who eventually confronted Hudson about his sexuality. She had hired a private investigator named Fred Otash to follow her husband, and the detective taped conversations that revealed Hudson's true feelings. After Hudson took a Rorschach test, a psychological assessment that can reveal underlying aspects of personality and identity, Gates began seriously questioning whether her husband was attracted to men. The confrontation that followed confirmed what she had suspected, leading to their divorce. Despite the end of his marriage, Hudson continued maintaining his heterosexual public image throughout the rest of his career. He dated women publicly, allowed publicity departments to manufacture romantic connections with his co-stars, and never acknowledged the truth about his identity. The constant performance required enormous psychological energy and created a burden that never lifted. When Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS in 1985, the truth finally emerged. His illness forced a public reckoning, not just with his sexuality, but with the disease that was killing thousands of gay men, while America largely ignored the crisis. Hudson's death helped change public perception of AIDS, bringing attention and eventually funding to research and treatment. But it also revealed the enormous cost of Hollywood's closet, a brilliant career built on systematic deception, a life lived in constant fear of exposure, and a truth that could only emerge when death made the consequences irrelevant. These 10 stars lived through Hollywood's golden age, a period celebrated for its glamour, its artistry, and its creation of the modern celebrity culture that still dominates entertainment. But behind the carefully lit publicity photographs and manufactured love stories existed a parallel reality. An underground network of secret relationships, hired companions, and elaborate deceptions designed to protect careers that depended entirely on appearing heterosexual. The infrastructure that developed to serve closeted stars, from Scotty Bauer's gas station operation to the studio-manufactured romances between gay men and lesbian women, reveals how systematically Hollywood enforced heterosexual conformity. This wasn't just about individual choices or personal shame. It was an industry-wide effort to hide truth and maintain profitable illusions, regardless of the human cost. The psychological toll on these performers was enormous. Many turned to alcohol or drugs to cope with the exhaustion of constant performance. Others lived in isolation, unable to build genuine relationships when every public moment required careful management. Some, like Montgomery Clift and Rock Hudson, died far too young, their lives shortened by the burden of secrets they could never fully escape. Looking back now, the waste is staggering. Brilliant talents forced to spend enormous energy maintaining lies instead of simply living. How much creativity was lost to the constant vigilant secrecy demanded? How many authentic relationships were sacrificed to protect carefully constructed images? And how long before we fully reckon with the industry's role in enforcing this cruelty? If these hidden truths changed how you see Hollywood's golden age, share this video, because these stars deserve to be remembered completely. Not just for their performances, but for the courage it took to survive in an industry that demanded they hide who they truly were.